Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and we are going to continue the library tour tonight. Um, I think we probably have two more of these. Well, yeah, two. I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna keep going tonight, and we'll see how far we get and how much more there is to do for the fiction books, at least. So, last time we stopped at C.S. Lewis, which is not a bad place to stop. So we will pick up where we left off. Okay, so to continue where we left off, like I said, I stopped with C.S. Lewis. I have actually just reread Till We Have Faces, and it is beautiful and it is terrifying, and if you can get through it without being very afraid to face God one day, you are either a saint or a devil or not very smart. So anyway, let's see. A little bit of Lovecraft, who is definitely interesting. Day Watch by Sergei Lukyanenko, who is a Russian science fiction / horror author. Very interesting, very different kind of atmosphere from a lot of books I've read. I don't know whether that's just him or whether that's kind of a Russian attitude. I actually found him because I watched a movie based on one of his, which was Night Watch, which is part of the same series. Although the movie varies a good bit from the book, but really interesting stories. Sergei Lukyanenko, Day Watch. Let's see. Brian Lumley, vampire stories. Mostly, well, I guess this one's a little bit different, but mostly writes vampire stories. And let's see. Interesting, definitely R-rated material, violent, sometimes sexual material. Oh, let's see. What else do you have? Moby Dick, which I read on my own. I somehow managed to get through high school and college without ever reading Moby Dick at all. And I read it on my own, and I liked it a lot, actually. It was very interesting. It does have entire chapters on detailed aspects of 19th century whaling. So, those aren't as fun, but the book as a whole is well done. The Elric books by Michael Moorcock. And those are, definitely some, very interesting material. I think it's worth reading at least a couple of them. They're pretty interesting stories. Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle's Inferno, and their sequel to that. And yeah, also very interesting. Kind of parallels Dante's Inferno, and it's a geez, what to say about it? Kind of a kind of skeptical or secular look at Dante's Inferno, but also, taking seriously the moral questions, and very interesting. Jerry Pournelle, a couple of his own, which are good, and then his There Will Be War series. And I have 1 and 2 here, and we're sliding down, and I have 3, 5, 7, and 9. Really excellent books. I highly recommend this series. Just some really fascinating stuff in there. And that's actually where I found Horatius at the Bridge, which I did, which I finished recording and editing together not that long ago. Okay, and let's see, not quite a complete shelf, but almost an entire shelf of Terry Pratchett. Very close to a complete shelf of Terry Pratchett. Mostly his Discworld series. Terry Pratchett is a fantastic writer. Very funny. Is able to be funny and morally serious at the same time, which is difficult to do. And sadly, he also subscribes to morality, a philosophy which I do not agree with, which comes through in several of these. Men-at-Arms, well, clearly guns are bad. People shouldn't have guns. Anti-racism, feminism, and so on and so forth. He's a fantastic writer, though. I mean, I cannot deny that. It's just, at a certain point, you realize he is using his talents to promote a vision that you don't agree with, and that's kind of a problem. But, he also, at different points, even within that world, even within that vision, he says some, very important and worthwhile things too. So, I do think some of his later books started going downhill, and at least I've heard some people suggest that his daughter was actually taking over writing some of those. So, could be. I'm not enough of an editor to really say about that kind of thing. Very well could be. But let's see. Terry Pratchett. I didn't really intend to do this, but I have the first and the last of the Harry Potter series, and none of them in between. It will be interesting to see how those are viewed 20 years from now or so. Whether they have any lasting value or whether they were just a big flash. Because we really don't have any way of knowing that, and it's fascinating. Time is the greatest critic of all, and whether those really mattered and whether those are something that will have a lasting impact, or whether they were just the fad of a decade or so, we'll find out. Next. The next thing I have a significant amount of is Fred Saberhagen. Fred Saberhagen's Berserker books and his series of the magical swords, and a few books of his that are not part of any particular series. Fred Saberhagen's interesting. It's he's really good at creating interesting worlds and interesting ideas, and putting like a world to explore. World building. There's the phrase I was looking for. He's really good at world building. He's not at all good at character writing most of the time, and so it's kind of frustrating because you see these interesting setups he creates, and you wish someone else took that and put really cool, really interesting people in those. But Berserker series, basically this is kind of, I guess you could kind of say, a space opera far-flung future, humanity is exploring the galaxy. They have faster-than-light travel of a kind that he doesn't really go into detail too much about. And they find themselves at war with, I guess you'd kind of call them a race of robots. Robots, some of which are the size of massive spaceships, and those robots also know how to make more of themselves, and they have one primary goal, which is the destruction of all life. And that's kind of the general setup. And he wrote a bunch of stories of humans confronting these and trying to survive and protect themselves and their and other a couple of other species, although not too many. The Fred Saberhagen Swords series, which actually starts off before the Swords with the Empire of the East, but most of it is taken up with the story of the 12 magical swords, which were forged by the gods, and are supremely powerful magical artifacts. In fact, the gods didn't know this when they started, but several of them can in fact kill the gods. And there's once these are kind of distributed among humanity, there's this big conflict breaks out, basically because everyone wants a piece of them. Everyone wants to control them because each of them, which have very different capabilities and very different powers, but each of them is an extraordinarily powerful magical artifact. And so, yeah. And like I said, he's really good at creating fascinating situations, fascinating worlds, not great at populating them with interesting characters. Although I don't have any of those here. He has written a few books. Fred Saberhagen has written a few books featuring Dracula, which actually kind of managed to work around that because he's borrowing other people's characters. Interesting books. Not a for my taste, not a huge amount of reread value. Brandon Sanderson, and you know what? Well, I'll talk about a couple of these, and I think that'll be it for tonight. First thing I heard about Brandon Sanderson is the Mistborn series, of which I do not have the third here. I think I loaned it and never got it back, which happens sometimes. But anyway. The Mistborn series, I heard about that from Orson Scott Card, because Brandon Sanderson is a Mormon, and Orson Scott Card promotes his fellow Mormons. Good for them. It's a good strategy, and I think other people should learn from it. Anyway, but Mistborn, which was a trilogy, medieval-esque fantasy, which is interesting in one respect because it's epic scale medieval fantasy. There's 3 of these, and it borrows absolutely nothing from Tolkien. There's no elves or dwarves or trolls. Also, this series is fascinating, and because he sets up one of the best executed plot twists I have ever seen in a series like this. And I can tell you the general outline of what he does without spoiling it, because in the first book, early on in the first book, he tells you something about one of the characters. As the books go on, he repeats it sometimes, comes back to it, and it just kind of becomes a part of that person. In the third book, he tells you something else. If he had told you these two things together, you would likely have said, oh, this is one of these, and you put it together. But by the time he tells you that other thing in book 3, I have 1 and 3 here. I'm missing 2. Anyway, by the time in book 3 he tells you that, it's just a kind of part of this character, and you don't think about it much at all. If he told you those two things together, you would have, you might have realized the significance. And then at the end of book 3, when he puts those two things together, it's a slap in the face in the best possible way. It's just complete shock, but it's also complete shock that you should have seen coming. And it's great storytelling. Anyway. And I think that's enough for tonight. I have some more Brandon Sanderson. And I have, obviously some more books to talk about. But I think that will do for tonight. And we'll come back and do at least one more of these. So, I hope you found this interesting, and God be with you.